kind of foods you want to put in your belly, all those things, right? So this week we're going to dive a bit more into, hold on, I'm pulling up the file here, but we're going to dive a bit more into essentially just understanding your patterns and understanding that there's always a bit of chaos. So we're going to talk about the chaos theory and how those two things relate and how you can implement that in your everyday life to create even more self-love and to curate even more so a life that you absolutely love. So give me a second here. Pulling up this PowerPoint and struggling to get it on here for some reason. Give me a second. We may have to go off the cuff. If this doesn't upload, it had no issues earlier. But nonetheless, we'll start off with a meditation, and then we'll dive deeper into all the little minute details of different levels of consciousness and how they relate to you. And I think I'm just going to share. I think I can share the screen from here, so we should be able to do that. What is going on with this thing? Mayday! All right, I'm having a little bit of an issue here, so I may have to come right back. Give me a second. I am back. Hey Daniel, good to see you. Can you hear me? Is everything working good on your end? I'm struggling to get this PowerPoint going. It's one of those things that everything was working fine earlier. But I'm just going to see if I can share my screen. I think that'll be easier. So let me organize that and just do that for you. Okay, cool. Awesome. Well, you're in for a treat today. We're going to start off with a meditation again. So give me a second. Share screen, window. All right. PowerPoint. Sorry for the slight delay here. Okay. It was a little easier to finagle when it was working good, but we'll make it work. We got this. I have complete faith. All right. Can you see the screen, Daniel? Are you able to see everything? Okay. Great. Oh, it looks like it's trying to load. Let me check it out. Okay. Here we are. So today we're going to go over patterns so you can understand deeper your patterns and chaos theory. Let me check to make sure you can see it good. I'm going to pull up the screen.
Understand deeper your pattern.
Okay, cool. Great. Everything's here. I'm happy now. Beautiful. All right. So, again, just a really quick refresher on the assignments for week 2. If you could email your anything that you've completed to my email address, which is above. And these are the 2 assignments that were requested. Thank you, Daniel. I saw your email, by the way. So I appreciate that. Always on top of it. I hear you on doing those assignments before too. I've done them as well. I've found that as my personality has matured and evolved, that my strengths and my weaknesses have too. So it's interesting to reevaluate as well. I'm able to see your chat on my phone. That's why I keep looking down. Just want to give you a heads up. All right. So let me get this music going. We're going to do this guided meditation. If you could get somewhere comfortable, ideally, to start. Okay. Thank you for being here again. When you're ready and in a seated or laying position, wherever you are, gently rest your hands on top of your knees. And then closing the eyes, just draw those eyes to close. Start with gentle breathing. Shift our awareness to our breath. We're going to be focusing and drawing our attention strictly to the breath. You're not trying to control anything here. Just simply notice every inhale and every exhale. Every inhale, feel the body fill up with air. Feel the gentle rise in the chest. Feel the belly rise and exhale all the way out. Allow the breath to ebb and flow through the body as we intentionally breathe here. Feel how the breathing rate slows down. Maybe the breath deepens slightly. And really just allow yourself to simply just be. There's nowhere else you need to be. Only in this moment. And then we're going to move through something called a box breath. Seal your lips off. Inhale through the nose for a count of 4. Hold at the top for a count of 4. Exhale for the count of 4. And hold at the bottom for a count of 4. And repeat this. Inhale through the nose, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. And carry on like this in your own time. This is uncomfortable for you. You can lower the counts. It's just important to keep the inhale, the hold, and the exhale all at the same number of counts. Just do a few more rounds. And as you breathe through this box breathing technique, feel how the body calms down. Feel how the nervous system regulates itself. And then when you've completed your last round, just let that breath control go. Slip back into your normal, natural, rhythmic breathing. Maybe notice if it feels a little bit different than it did before. Maybe it's a little lower in the belly. Maybe there's a little less tension up in the chest or in the body. Just notice that feeling of calm and ease. And then slowly we're going to draw our attention to our intention. Welcoming in an intention for the rest of the evening, for the course of tonight. Just a simple word, a phrase, a statement, anything that rings true for you, anything that you would like to move with and through, anything you would like to call into your life at this moment, and focusing on an intention while we meditate is a really nice way to guide ourselves through the rest of the evening and through this presentation. Also, it brings a sense of awareness to our minds, maybe our thoughts that might be floating in our minds. If you'd like some sort of inspiration, maybe the idea of acknowledgement and release. This idea of noticing where we've been, yet releasing the past and allowing ourselves to live in the present. Releasing any worries of the future, anything that might be on our minds. And with this intention of acknowledgement and release, I offer you a short reading today. And let these words resonate with you. And if they don't, just simply let them go. An acknowledgement to self. A letter to self, a poem to self, an offering to self, an acknowledgement to self, an offering to express my recognition, an acknowledgement that I deserve, and this is often something we don't give ourselves enough credit of. The honor well-deserved pat on the back. Embrace and love where you've been, where I've been, where I am now, and the trust to know where I'm going and being okay with if I don't. Looking back, I'm proud of myself, of my experiences and what I've endured, the internal landscapes I've overcome, the times I've gotten myself out of and through and will continue to do so, my transformational journey up until this point, an acknowledgement of this journey of surrendering to the changes, an acknowledgement of this healing journey in this moment. And although it may not have been, or it might have been uncomfortable and terrifying in the past, I release all of that. I let it go. I surrender to this present moment. I am proud of these journeys. I am proud of my expression, of delving deep and discovering and rediscovering myself. I am proud of the softening I have allowed within myself, the openness I am starting to become comfortable with, the vulnerability, the breaking down of walls and letting myself out, the patience I start to cultivate, the expectations I minimize and release, the projections I am trying to silence that do not serve me. This energy that I have created, I let go of the pressures, internal or external. I let go of the past, and I acknowledge the vast growth I have had and am still having. I do not fear these changes or growth. I completely embrace them. I am proud of my living human experience. I am proud of the lessons I have learned along the way. I am proud of all sides of the complex being I am and the fact that I get to learn from others. With all that being said, I release that does not serve me right now. So just let those words settle. Start to draw your attention back to your breath. Notice where you're at. And to end our meditation today, let's take one big inhale through the nose. Exhale out, let it go, release. And I thank you again for being here today. My heart overflows with gratitude, and I hope you acknowledge yourself today for your strength and the journey that you've had thus far. You deserve it. All right, let me pull this up here. Hey, Daniel. Okay, cool. All right. Got this pulled up. I see you here. Definitely maturing. Yeah. I hope you enjoyed that meditation as well. I wanted to get something to keep us centered and intentional for the rest of the presentation. And what I'll cover again today, we'll do the patterns and chaos theory. Again, if you've been here prior to now, the QR code on the bottom is just simply the best way to reach me. You can find my link tree there, and it has all of my data to get a hold of me. If you're interested in my coaching or you just want to check out what I have on there. All right. So again, we've already gone through the foundation of holistically navigating self. We've also gone over conquering and knowing that you are in charge of mastering yourself. So today, let's talk about the different levels of consciousness, and we'll also talk about, oh, cool, I got this pulled up here. That did not work. Where did I go? Sorry, give me a second. We'll also talk about the contraction and the expansion of the growth process, because I feel like, again, no one really talks about the depths of that. They just dig into these different levels and these things that you experience, and they don't really talk about the details of, hold on, let me lower this, of the journey and how to navigate that. So today is really going to be about that. How to notice your patterns, how to really look deeper into your reactions, and how to really be able to just be more conscious as you move through life. My goal for you after you leave here today is to be able to see a pattern within yourself and basically punch it in the face, for lack of a better way of putting it, and it no longer allow it to have control over you. Um, so, all right. You'll see here on the left is the consciousness level. It starts the lower portion. It starts at pride down to anger, desire, fear, grief, apathy, guilt, shame. And in the middle, we have courage, which is what shifts everything. There's neutrality, willingness, acceptance, reason, love, joy, peace, enlightenment. And if you look to the right, you'll see at the very top, it says what you experience at the very top of consciousness is synchronicities and extra outcomes or extraordinary outcomes, peak performance without stress, happiness and productivity. And on the lower levels below courage, you see hyperactivity, inaction, and to the left, it shows there's power when you push up and there's force when you push down. So, contraction and expansion, right? Let's talk about this. Every single layer that we encounter, because this journey is a spiral, and each time we go around the spiral, and something in our lives pushes us deeper into learning about ourselves and really having to understand our patterns and who we are and the things we need to push beyond, right? And to no longer allow to control us. We see deeper in. It's a lot like what I mentioned earlier when you evolve and you mature and you start asking others about your strengths and your weaknesses. Each time you come around that spiral, you're going to have a different experience. You're going to go deeper into it. And what you get from that is the ability to reach more freedom in your life, more joy, more peace, more the ability to obtain an enlightenment, right? And we're human. We're going to have moments where we regress. So as soon as you reach a point where you expand, let's say something occurs and you see deeper into something that you hadn't really realized before. So including this course, Daniel, this is why I want to discuss this. You may learn something here that you didn't really fully grasp in a certain way. And I'm not saying it may be completely new to you, because I'm sure all of these concepts are things you've heard before, but perhaps I explain it in a way that you never understood it before. And so what that does, yeah, awesome, Daniel, spending your time on the top of the scale. But what that does is that creates more expansion in your life, in your energy field, in your ability to move more consciously. And with expansion, when we make the unconscious conscious, or when we make our shadows light and we shine light on it, what it does is it's creating more space for us to process and see the things we've been missing. And so in those moments, we may regress. We may have a contraction. We may go backwards a little bit, because you start to see things and process things and understand things that you hadn't really understood before, because you simply just didn't know what you didn't know, right? And as you bounce back and forth, if you can be mindful of where you're at and keep this with you along your journey, it'll really help you to stay centered. So that way, you know, okay, this is normal, and you can bounce back. Again, you are in control. You get to decide how long you want to stay in a certain state or allow it to control you. But I always recommend that you never, ever avoid feeling an emotion or releasing something that doesn't serve you any longer. And when we process things that we didn't realize we needed to process, sometimes those emotions can be heavy. And sometimes we can feel like we're moving backwards, but in fact, what we're doing is we're moving forward. And as we release, the higher we move, and there's less weight carrying us down. So always be mindful. Every time I've had any kind of expansion or growth in my life, there's always been a little bit of a bounce back. And no one is immune to this. Everybody has this. When anyone has a great success in their business, I mean, it all comes in different forms. People call it different things, right? And then potentially they have this burst of excitement and they start to heal in certain ways because they have all of these things lining up in their life finally. It allows them to process, it's all the same thing, right? And see things a little more clear, shining lights on things they didn't realize they didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. And this process can be a little heavy, and it can be at times, I wouldn't say hard, but if you're moving mindfully through it, it doesn't have to control you for long, and you'll bounce back quicker. And also, you'll be able to be more mindful about it, right? So you can communicate with yourself and say, okay, like when kids have growth spurts, we know we have. I know I had this for my daughter, thankfully. Thank God technology was around and I was able to Google stuff because it helped me on the hardest days where she'd cry and I can't read an infant's mind, right? So I'd look up growth spurts and there was always an age time frame. And it's similar thought process, right? If I was able to look that up and understand, then I could work around that and curate the best plan of attack for that and just allow it to happen in the most intelligent way instead of making a big fuss, instead of stressing. We understood what was going on. With clarity, we can move smarter. So really just want to make that clear. And as you can see here, the more action you take just in a mindful way, the better your life flows. I really like how, okay, so it says pride, anger, desire. They're all clumped right here underneath courage, right? That creates hyperactivity. It really, that to me is so interesting because you think about the energy of anger, the energy of pride. It's desire. It almost has this like adrenaline rush to it. It makes a whole lot of sense, right? It's fear driven at its core. Um, when you desire something versus feel love for it, to me, those are two completely different energies, right? Love is this pure, warm sensation that just allows you to experience the moment. I love this graph. I wanted to share that with you guys. Okay. So let's talk about, now that we've gone over a bit of understanding, bouncing back and forth, cognitive distortions. And this is huge, especially now. So many people are polarized in our world, and we're dealing with a lot of stressors right now. I'm sure if you're watching the news or at least have any kind of idea about what's going on in the world, you could list at least 20 things in my comment section about just chaos, right? And those things alone are setting us up at a very chaotic level within ourselves if we're giving it energy and time. So be very mindful about how much energy you're pouring towards that. I'm not saying that we should be ignoring reality. I'm saying energetically and emotionally be mindful about how much energy you're exerting towards that, because it could literally drain you, right? So got a bunch of graphs for you guys today. This is just a graph about the perceptual process. And as humans, it explains it very, very basically. I don't really want to go into the details on that because it's not really rocket science, right? We experience something, we have a reaction. It's not that hard to understand. But as we've already discussed, we all have different upbringings, we all have different belief systems, we all have different just values, we all have different patterns that we live in. And understanding these distortions will really help you understand that you have control over how you view and approach life, right? So, cognitive distortions. I'm curious, Daniel, I'm sure you've heard of cognitive distortion before, but as I read these, let me know if any of these, like, they feel or resonate with you on any level. We have all or nothing. So seeing things as black or white. So this is like the best example. So many people, when they go through breakups, I feel like that's when most people have this all or nothing mindset, right? It's so hard to see the good when you're heartbroken. It's so hard to see the good. And sometimes it's hard to see the bad too. It just depends either way. But all or nothing thinking gets rid of that gray area, which really explains reality versus, oh, that person's bad or this person's good. Overgeneralization, that's seeing a single negative event as a never-ending pattern. I can give a good example of that. My PTSD symptoms that I've had when they first strike me and I have some sort of trigger in my past, especially when they first started happening, it felt like I was going to have to deal with that for the rest of my life. And it felt like torture. So I can understand how people can get stuck in that idea, right? Where a single negative event is a never ending pattern. I luckily was able to push past a lot of that. I still have a few minor symptoms here and there, but a lot of people do this with when they view other people or they see things in life, they overgeneralize like, oh, that person said this means that they're this way. Or, oh, that person loves the color blue, that means they're this way. Or you're a Virgo, that means you're this way. Or whatever it is, right? We generalize and put people and things into categories. Mental filter, hyper focusing on a single negative event. So that's very, very common as well. I find this a lot in my coaching with my clients where they have a hard time getting past something when they've been betrayed or really hurt in a deep way with somebody. And it's hard for some people to push past that. Rejecting the positive, dismissing positive experiences. So I'm sure you've heard of people doing that before. I've experienced that before. Mind reading, assuming negatively without checking. This one is huge, 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 huge. In the age of technology, I see your comment, Daniel. We'll get back to that. In the age of technology, everybody thinks they can mind read now. And it's so sad because it takes a minute to pick up a phone and have a conversation with somebody, but we're so quick to just react and run away, right? Fortune telling, predicting the worst, same concepts. Catastrophizing, minimization, magnifying the negative, minimizing the positive. Should statements, trigger yourself with should and shouldn't, feeling guilt. Labeling, when you're describing things in creative and emotional ways. Personalization, Taking responsibility for things outside personal control. Yes. Oh gosh, that one I'm going to hit on for a bit because I feel like, especially with people who have endured trauma, I've noticed maybe heavy events in their past or just a lot. They've dealt with a lot in their past. They tend to think things like, "Oh, I deserve this," or, "Oh, that's my fault." But in reality, most times these things are out of our control, right? Or they're not even related to us in any way, shape, or form. You put 3, 4, and 7 until, yeah. Hey, I've been guilty of probably all of these at some point in my life. I started doing a lot of research on cognitive distortions. It was around the time my daughter was born, and I realized that because of the paradigm I grew up in, I had a filter that I approached life with at that time. And at any specific time, I could have been using all of these in different ways. I mean, it was intense how fear was driving me in my past. So I became very passionate, and what it helped me understand this was meeting somebody who helped me expand my mind and see that I didn't know what I didn't know, and they showed me something outside of the norm of what I thought was reality and what I had experienced, and they stayed positive and present, and I realized, wow, like, I'm not right. And I think that's how a lot of us initially start to expand and grow in this way, right? Because we have somebody who sees potential in us perhaps, and they allow us a safe space to experience that with them. And so after that, I became very passionate about really helping people understand you don't know what you don't know. And there are so many different distortions. There are so many different things that you can look up. Literally, I'm pretty sure I could write a book on this. There are so many. But I wanted to grab just a handful to go over with you guys, at least to kind of expand and open your mind, or at least be a refresher and reminder that these are all things to look out for. And we all get guilty of it, all of us. If someone tells you they don't do these things, then they just have been raised by the most amazing humans and they're probably not real. So, all right. Neural activity. I really got super excited about this earlier because for years I've been preaching that pausing is so important for you, and I've been practicing it my whole life just instinctually and intuitively. And anytime I've endured anything intense in my life, I've taken the time to really sit with it and pause and recalibrate and rewire. And um, neuroscience is backing this up and stating that in deep sleep and deep rest, we're able to rewire our brains while we are also focused on deep learning. So I really wanted to cover this today because if you really want to rewire your mind and change your patterns and your habits for the better, these are skills you need to have and know and understand. And there's this belief system that you have to work and hustle and you can't rest, and that's just not true or healthy for you. We all need to rest. We all need to pause. We all do. Whether or not we admit it to ourselves or outwardly, nobody is immune to that need. Our brains literally need this. So, with that said, I thought this was a neat little graph. It shows you the neural activity in each state. So, that's what your mind is doing when you're awake. the onset of sleep, light sleep, slow waves dreaming, and then REM sleep. So I just thought that was neat. Again, the power of pausing. So next time you encounter something where you feel like you have endured an expansion of some sort, or perhaps you feel like you are regressing, or you have a moment where things just don't feel right or they're not flowing, maybe you have more of an emotional response or reactivity, it's really the best time to choose to pause, because what it does is it helps you have more clarity as to why, and you can really sit with it, meditate on it, and allow yourself to get past it instead of avoid it, suppress, etc. Okay, I thought this was pretty neat. I hope you can hear it. Tell me if you can hear this, Daniel, because I'm not sure since I shared my screen if it'll work.
The two pool tables are almost identical. Only one ball is slightly out of place. When we hit the cue ball, the movement on both tables starts off the same way. But after a little while, not too long, the trajectories become completely different. If we want to predict the future of the cue ball, we can do so. But we need to know in detail the positions of all the balls on the table, and there are so many of them. A small uncertainty about a single ball shatters any hope of determining the future path of the cue ball.
All right. So the chaos theory is so heavily related to this process within ourselves. And during my deep dive days, I stumbled across chaos theory. I'm not even sure how. I was really deep diving into a lot of different things. Outer space was an obsession of mine, because I realized from doing so much just intrinsic healing and research of all the great minds and the people that I wanted to emulate, that space mimics our everyday life. Everything in space is just a imitation, and vice versa, right? It's all just expressed in different ways. We're all made of energy and atoms. And there's a really great comedy skit about that I'll have to maybe share next time, because I think it would be fun. But there is a rhyme to a reason. There's a method to the madness, and sometimes chaos just is. And if we can expect and understand what these things are, then we can understand how to move intelligently, just like I preach for literally everything. My mindset literally is like the chaos theory, holistic approach towards this, right? So the chaos theory states, when the present determines the future, but the approximate present does not approximately determine the future. Chaos theory concerns deterministic systems whose behavior can, in principle, be predicted. Chaotic systems are predictable for a while and then appear to become random. The amount of time for which the behavior of a chaotic system can be effectively predicted depends on three things: how much uncertainty can be tolerated in the forecast, how accurately its current state can be measured, and a time scale depending on the dynamics of the system. So essentially, what this is saying is if we move more consciously through our chaos, we can decipher it, we can measure it, we can define it, we can find a way out, and it doesn't have to control us anymore. And as someone who used to thrive in chaos and think that that was normal, this should be my badge of honor. And this is how we find our patterns, guys. It's strictly by measuring and paying attention and doing the self inquiry and really being honest about, okay, this made me feel this way. And then I did this. And then finding a smarter way to do it. And then the science behind that, right? Like, was this smarter way better? No. Okay, next option. Was this smarter way better? No. Okay, next option. And then you start to realize that most things can be predictable. And as you move more consciously, you see so deeply into little things and into the moment. And anyone who's experienced this in any form in their life can deeply relate with what I'm saying. And I like to bring this up because if we can understand that chaos truly is just disorganized reality, it's just not defined, it won't be so intimidating anymore. We can navigate it intelligently instead of adding more chaos to the bucket. And with that said, you're really only as strong as your weakest muscle. So I'm really big on pushing my limits, and I challenge all of you to do the same. So if you have a habit of regressing back to a certain pattern, for me, one thing I've mentioned before, was I used to have a hard time being vulnerable. I had a hard time showing my shadow self and allowing people to see my dark moments because I felt like a burden or whatever it may have been, right? That was my weakest muscle. That held me back. Vulnerability is strength. Being able to show your darkest moments in a mindful way and move consciously through it, that is strength. And I am proud to say that I have mastered that within myself. Do I still have days where I'm challenged? Absolutely. Do I still regress or want to regress back to old patterns? Absolutely. But man, have I come a long way. And I want that for all of you guys, because once you realize the deeper you see into these things, the more control you have as you become more consciously aware of them, the more light you shine on it, the more discipline you bring to it, those moments will no longer control you, right? So whatever your weakest muscle is, I want you to sit here in this moment with me and think about it. We all know what our weakest moments are. We all know what we regress back to when we have a stressor or some sort of trigger or something that pushes us, right? Whatever it may be. If you could think of that, and I'll come back to that. Good, Daniel. You're getting close to self-mastery. Yeah, it's truly a lifelong journey. Anyone I look up to greatly will tell you that, because there's layers to it, right? You just get better at it. I mean, Tony Robbins is a good example of that. He's he preaches on shifting your state immediately. And I remember the first time he said that, I was like, what? How do you do that? And now I live that. So just having grace with yourself when you do regress or you have any of those moments, right? That's compassionate movement through those moments, not feeling shame in those moments. That's going to get you through quicker. All right. And a really great mentor that I was lucky enough to have a very deep conversation with one day, who does mindset work in the real estate investing world. And he's been around for years. He's created massive amounts of wealth for himself. I look up to him greatly. He's just a good human and has a kind heart, and he's created a lot of wonderful things to help people thrive in their lives. We had a very deep conversation about my journey, and he helped give me some insight. And one thing he said that will always stay with me is to always anticipate roadblocks, potholes, and any kind of detours on your journey. And it's so important. And I've talked about all of these topics before. Today's really just meant to dive a little deeper in intentionally, so that way you can move more consciously through these things, right? Next week, just to give you a heads up, we're going to start planning out your future and how you want that to look. And I'm going to help you navigate your energy and your focus and help you map that out in an intelligent way. My goal is to have a quantum jumping exercise for you as well. So if you want to start thinking about that for next week, that's why I'm giving you a heads up. Write out what your most ideal future looks like. Don't have any logic. Don't put any logic to it. Literally, like, get rid of all rules in your mind, any limitations. Don't even think about, oh, well, I can't afford whatever it is, or I have to do this with this person. Don't think about anybody but you and what you desire. And now that we've seen that chart in a loving way for your future, and really start mapping that out, because we're going to do an exercise with that next week. Okay. But when you anticipate roadblocks and potholes and detours, so basically anticipating chaos in your life, those things might knock you down. They might throw you off guard. They might piss you off at whatever it is, but you'll bounce right back and you'll be resilient in those moments, because you'll anticipate that there's always going to be a level of uncertainty. There's always going to be a level of chaos. And as long as you move consciously, you can start to see how you can move intelligently through all of that in a way that is mindful and smart for you, so that you are loving yourself first through the chaos, instead of being impulsive and mindless, and then 5 or 10 years later regretting whatever it is that happened in those moments, right? So week 3 assignments. That other assignment is kind of a bonus for you guys to do, but these are the real homework assignments. We already talked about it. Which pattern do you get stuck in the most? The one that is your weakest link. I want you to write out in detail what that looks like. What do you do? What are you thinking? What do you feel? What exactly goes on in those moments? Everything, like down to the thought processes, if you crave a certain food. I'm just giving examples, whatever it is, right? Everybody's different. I don't want to fill up your mind with an idea because I want you to come up with what's true for you. And you don't have to share the details with me, but if just at least put bare minimum down and just say done. Shift tool. So I want you to come up with a plan of attack. That's what I'm going to call it. Plan of attack. So that you can pull yourself out of these patterns that are holding you back in those moments. And I want you to tell me what that looks like. Are you going to work out a little harder that day? Are you going to not eat sugar that day? Are you going to put on Queen and dance around the living room that day? What is it? Everybody's a little different, right? Are you going to be more vulnerable that day? Are you going to rest that day? Be as vulnerable with yourself as you can in this exercise, because all it's going to do is help you. It's just going to make you stronger and see deeper in. And I feel like this went by so fast, but we've reached the tail end. If you want to schedule a call, that's the best way to reach me. I don't know how to stop sharing. There we go. Okay, cool. But thank you guys. Thank you, Daniel, for being here. Again, I so appreciate you. You've been so supportive and awesome. Let's dig into your patterns here. Let's get you past them. You're already doing an awesome job. I'm sure you're already working on all of these things. So let's rock it. I appreciate you. I hope you have a good night. Thank you, everybody who's watching. If you watch this after the fact, if you have any questions, feel free to email me as well. And I'll talk to you soon. Thank you, Daniel. I appreciate you. Have a good night.